A very good morning, Class 8, and welcome to your social science class. Students, we were doing the chapter Understanding Marginalization, and today we will be finishing off this chapter in the two periods that we have. So in this period, which is the second period, we will be discussing on the topic minorities and marginalization. And then in the third period, when we have a live class, we will go on to understand about the Muslims and marginalization. So students, this period, let us concentrate on the topic that is highlighted here, that is minorities and marginalization. So students, if you remember, then in the last class we undertook a topic on Adivasis and development, Adivasis and stereotyping, isn't it? So let us quickly recall those topics. And how do we recall? We recall by trying to answer certain questions. Okay, so today I'll be asking you two questions to test your previous knowledge regarding your last class. So the first question that I want to ask you is, how are the Adivasis being treated in the name of national development? Or in other words, what kind of problems are the Adivasis facing due to the governmental steps for developing the nation? So what should be the answer for this? Do you remember? I'm sure you do. Well, the very beginning, Adivasis lose their land. Number two, they lose their access to forest. And hence, number three, they also lose their livelihood and food. So, national development is undoubtedly taking place in all the areas where Adivasis live, but at the stake of the Adivasi population, isn't it? Next question. If you remember, I told you all that when Adivasis are displaced from their land, they lose much more than a sense of income. Do you remember the line? So what else do you think they lose apart from the land? Well, they lose their traditions and customs. They lose all those practices which they have been following ever since they were kids. So hence, Adivasis not only lose their land, not only lose their income, but also they lose certain customs, certain traditions which they have been following, which their forefathers have been following since time immemorial. So students, this brings us to the next topic of the chapter, which is also the second last topic, which we are going to discuss about in the second period today, and that is marginalization and the minorities. So before beginning with the explanation, I would like to read out the learning outcome for today. So after today's discussion, you will be able to highlight the crucial role played by the judiciary in upholding the law and enforcing fundamental rights of the minorities. So keeping in mind these outcomes for today, let us begin with the discussion. So students, during one of our civics classes before, I think you remember the first line if you see the slide. Constitution provides safeguard to religious and linguistic minorities as part of our fundamental rights. So do you remember one of the fundamental rights of India, which is provided by our Constitution? It states that there is a right for religion, right to religion, isn't it? Whereby everybody in the country, be it the majority community, be it the minority community, everybody has got the right to safeguard their religion as well as they have got the right to safeguard their language and their culture. And this is a part of our Constitution. So now the question that must be arising in your mind is that why does these minority groups have to be provided with such safeguards? Why does the Constitution give them certain special provisions? This must be a question in your mind right now, isn't it? So we will come to that, but before that, let us try to understand the meaning of the term minority. So what is minority? If you can read the slide, then let me read it for you. The term minority is most commonly used to refer to communities that are numerically small in relation to the rest of the population. So minority people are those whose population is less in compared to the other communities. Okay, but all the time we cannot say that numbers describe whether one is a minority group or a majority group. This concept of minorities goes much beyond numbers. It goes much beyond numbers because it encompasses or it includes issues of power, issues of access to resources, and also have lots of social and cultural dimensions. So when we say minority, we not only mean the number of people, we also mean what kind of power such certain group of people have access to, how much resources certain groups of people have access to, and what are their cultural and social status in the society. So it's not just numbers that tells who belongs to a minority community, who belongs to a majority community. It in fact goes much beyond that. The makers of our Indian Constitution knew that if a majoritarian form of a government is followed in India, then the culture of the majority would have the tendency to influence the way with which the society and the government should work. That is why the Indian Constitution did not give any special recognition to those communities which already are considered to be belonging to the majority. And in such cases, if by any chance majoritarianism is followed in a country, then the size of the population, the small size of the population can be a disadvantage. And if too much emphasis is given on the majority communities, then the minority communities might be feeling marginalized in the society. So that is why certain important safeguards and certain important provisions are required to protect the minority communities against the possibility of being dominated by the majority people. Isn't it? That is why our government does not give any importance to just the majority people, but also they tries to make the minority people feel safe in their own country without being dominated by the majority. They also protect them against any discrimination and disadvantage that they may face in their own country. So since there are certain communities that are smaller in number, and there are some communities which are larger in number, therefore there might be a sense of insecurity in the minds of those communities whose numbers are less. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so this sense of insecurity may get accentuated. It may get even more serious if the relations between the minority and majority communities are fraught. Fraught herein means if they are not very secured, isn't it? So if the relations between the minority and the majority are not in a proper balance maintained by the government, in that case there might be certain insecurities, there might be certain fights within the majority community on one hand and within the minority community in the other hand. The Constitution provides safeguard also because it is committed to protecting India's cultural diversity and promoting equality as well as justice. So we all know India is a country which is full of diversity, yet our constitution makers made it sure that our constitution provides certain safeguards in order to protect the minorities so that India's cultural diversity do not die out. And this cultural diversity becomes a reason for better equality as well as for justice in our country. And the most important role that is played in upholding the law and enforcing the fundamental rights regarding the minorities is the judiciary. By any chance, if any minority people feel that their rights are being violated, their rights are being taken away, in that case, they can approach the court. They can go to the High Court and the Supreme Court if they believe that their fundamental rights are harmed. It can be a person from the marginalized community, but still the judiciary is there who looks after everybody equally, and it tries to provide justice in a better and a proper manner. So students, these are the very important words which we have come across today. Accentuated, which means making some noticeable or prominent. Fraught means causing something which is very undesirable. For example, a fight or a war. Safeguard means to protect from harm or damage with an appropriate measure. So here we talked about the safeguard of the the safeguard of the minorities by the Constitution, by providing the fundamental right of enabling everyone to follow and practice their religion and their culture, isn't it? So students, make sure you write these words and the meanings in your copy and submit it to me along with your homework for today. And what is your homework for this period? Well, your homework is this. So let me discuss it with you all quickly. This sense of insecurity may get accentuated if the relations between the minority and majority communities are fraught. Identify the cause of insecurity of the minorities. So this we have already discussed. So once you go through the slides again and once you listen to the video once again, I'm sure you will be able to write this answer, and it's only for 1 mark. So 1 line is enough. Next question. Constitution provides safeguards to religious and linguistic minorities as part of our fundamental rights. Give reason. This is for 3 marks. So students, I'm expecting 3 solid points from you. Next question. If minorities believe that their fundamental rights have been violated, what step can they take? Well, we have discussed about that just in the last slide, if you remember, isn't it? All right, students. So that's all for this period today. We have discussed about marginalized people, especially relating to the minorities. And we talked about why minorities should get special provisions. And then we also talked about what happens if too much emphasis is given on a majority community in the country, isn't it? So students, I hope you all have watched the video well. If you did not understand whatever I said to you all, then kindly listen to it once again, go through it once again. I will be sharing the PPT with you all, so make sure that you go through it well. And in case of any doubt, I am available in the 3rd period as well for you for the live class. So before we begin with the last topic from the chapter, I'll be clearing your doubts, if any, regarding this topic that I have discussed now. So that's all for the 2nd period, dear students. Thank you so much for joining in, and I'll be waiting for you in the 3rd period for your live class today. Thank you.